Xin Chao, this is Baby Boomer Mike Madrid being brought to you completely unrehearsed and recorded on my studio in the central coast of California, a little city called Lompoc. In 1970, the U.S. Navy sent me on my first tour in Vietnam, and I served a year as a helicopter door gunner with the U.S. Navy HAL 3 Seawolves, part of the Brownwater Navy in the Mekong Delta. Now, one of my biggest regrets is I didn't keep a diary when I went. In 2020, I went back, and this time I kept a diary. I'm no good at writing, so I did a video diary, mostly on my GoPro and some on my still cameras. And I've been back a year, and I thought maybe somebody else would be interested in this. So I've put together some videos. Now, this first one is primarily to record my flight back to Vietnam. And my first entry is at the Santa Maria Airport, where I'm waiting for a shuttle bus to take me to LAX. So stand by, and here comes my first entry in my video log. It's February 26, 2020, and after 50 years, I'm going back to Vietnam, and I'm sitting here at the airport in Santa Maria catching the shuttle to LAX. Looks like we got about 3 other cars waiting for the shuttle. Should be here any time now. So I'll talk some more when I have something to say. What you're seeing now is me wandering around the international terminal at LAX. For a while, I didn't even think I was going to get here. I'm just wandering around practicing with the GoPro. I had originally booked my flight through supercheapairlinetickets.com, and I was going from LAX and stop over in China. But because of the pandemic, that flight was suddenly canceled, no option to reschedule, and I had to scramble to get a new flight. So I got a new flight, I get to LAX, I go to the international terminal, and I can't find the counter for the airline I'm supposed to fly on, and I'm going, oh great, I've been scammed, because the people I asked hadn't even heard of that airline. So I start wandering up and down, looking at all the counters, and I find On Air, and it had a flight number that matched my flight number at the same destination at the same time. So I walk up with my e-ticket, and I hand it to them, and I am booked with them, even though the airline name isn't the same. So then I get through security, and I'm wandering around, and I get bored, and I sit down at the waiting area, and I've been using my GoPro with a shotgun mic, and I'd never used my lavalier, so I hooked up my lavalier to test it out, pointed the camera at myself, started talking, no plan, and I started reminiscing about how this flight was compared to my original flight in 1970. And so that's what you're going to be seeing next. Now, when I'm talking, some of the B-roll, the pictures and videos that are running while I'm talking, some of them match what I'm talking about. Some of them don't. Some of them are just videos, pictures of my first trip and some later. But I figured you'd rather see that than to me being a talking head. So my next video audio entry is coming up now. Okay, it's February 26, 2020. I've already started my trip back to Vietnam. After 50 years, I survived the shuttle trip from Santa Maria to LAX. Seats were kind of cramped, but I was able to sleep most of the way because I didn't get much sleep last night. I headed out the door about 2 o'clock in the morning. It's quite a bit different than the trip I took the last time 50 years ago. 50 years ago, I got up in the morning. I was stationed out at Naval Air Station, Ream Field, Imperial Beach, California. It's long, long gone. It's been closed almost 50 years now. But this is where we did our air crew training. Pilots and the gunners and the sea air rescue people. We had a lot of courses like combat first aid and combat pistol and swim quals and a bunch of stuff like that. It was kind of like a college setting. You'd have an hour class, which worked out good because this is where I watched Apollo 13. We get out of class and we glue ourselves to the TV set, find out what was happening to Apollo 13. So when it was time to go to Vietnam, I did most of my check out the squadron the day before I left, and then the morning I left, I just had a few things to do. And I walk out the gate because I had my dad's pickup truck there. I couldn't keep it on base. It wasn't going to be there long enough to go through all the rigmarole, so I just kept it off base. And I remember getting into the truck, and it is facing the Jolly Rotor, who's the enlisted man's club called the Jolly Rotor. It had kind of a pirate with some kind of rotor blades. And on the radio was Zager and Evans in the year 2525. And then it was about a 4-hour drive to my house. Stayed in my room, tried to sleep for a couple hours, wondering if, where I spent my teenage years, whether I was ever going to see it again. And then my folks drove me to the Santa Barbara airport. And I got on a flight to San Francisco, and my grandparents lived next to the San Francisco airport, and they picked me up. Spent the night there, went out to Mexican dinner at a place called Tia Maria's. Why I remembered that, I don't know. And the next morning, my grandparents drive me out to Travis Air Force Base. That's where we're all leaving from, and I'm sitting in the back seat in my tropical whites. And my grandfather's worried about getting through the gate, which I knew wasn't going to be any problem. So we pull up to the gate, and he starts to say, well, my grandson here, and I'm in the back seat, and the guard is looking. I just held up my orders, and he passed us through, told us where to go. And they went into the terminal there where all my buddies were with me, and it was kind of awkward. And then they said they'd be going now, and I felt good again. And then it was hop on a flight from Travis Air Force Base. It was Stretch DC-8. It was a civilian charter airplane. And the end number was 6948 Tango or 4869 Tango, I forget which. And we flew to Hawaii. Spent an hour there refueling. I remember getting off the plane and all these people in Hawaiian clothes and getting their leis put on them, and they're going off to have a nice vacation, and here we are in the same terminal, and we're going off to war, and nobody seemed to notice. So I got on the flight again, and we landed at Wake Island, which was kind of interesting. And that's where the Marines put out their stand right after Pearl Harbor. And we were there for about an hour. Take off, go to the Philippines, Clark Air Force Base. We had a layover there. And a few hours, get back on the plane. And we've been on that traveling about 24 hours, and it had been light the whole time, and as we're pulling into Vietnam, going into Tan Son Nhut, Saigon, it was finally dark.
아시아나항공에서 주 손님을 찾습니다. 아시아나항공 오지 2011편 인천으로 예우하시는 한훈수 손님, 박훈수 손님, 박동석 손님, 박동석 손님, 이미령 손님은 지금 즉시 탑승구 152번으로 오셔서 아시아나 직원의 안내를 받아주시기 바랍니다. 감사합니다.
And so we came into Saigon at night, and it looked from the air like any other mid-sized city. And we landed get it off the plane, and that's where it changed. The heat hit, the heat and the smell. It was so hot and it was so smelly, and we went to the Annapolis Hotel a few days there. Now here I am 50 years later. I drive to my sister's house, leave my car at my sister's house. She drives me to the Santa Maria airport to get the shuttle bus. Here I am in LAX, and this time I've got a digital camera. I've got several digital cameras. I've been keeping in touch by cell phone, sending text and sending pictures. I'm sending text and pictures to Saigon, and this time I want to go. I really want to go. The last time I didn't want to go. But on the other hand, being young, I was enjoying the adventure. So the flight will be boarding in about an hour.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. EVA Airways BR5 is waiting for passenger Marcochin, passenger Jeremy Rodriguez. Please proceed to gate 155. Gate 155 for travel documentation. Thank you.
And this time we'll be flying direct LAX to Tokyo. Couple 3 hours layover in Tokyo, and then on to Tansanut. And I'll see what it's like today. I know it's changed with YouTube. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos over the past 8-10 years, and things have really changed, and I'm looking forward to it. I'll get back to you if I think of anything new. Yeah, speaking about anything new, I already told you about the cell phone. I've been checking in with people. I've got my iPad here and my phone, and I can sit here with Wi-Fi in the terminal, and I can look at my surveillance cameras at home. I've got 12 cameras on the outside of the house. I've got 4 on the inside, plus 2 nanny cams, plus a doorbell camera, and I can just sit there either on my phone or on my iPad and see what's going on in my house. Hopefully this works when I get to Vietnam. They have a lot of Wi-Fi there, free Wi-Fi, but sometimes the speed isn't too good. I'll find out, and then I have to get a SIM card for my cell phone so I can make calls. That'll be after I get some sleep. We're going to go out and get a SIM card for my cell phone, see how it works. Well, here I am on my airplane. I think it's a Boeing 777. I did read the safety card. Okay, I'm in the center section. This is the other side of the airplane. 3 seats across. I think all the center seats were empty. Now, Mikey, swing the camera around so that people can see the other side of the airplane. Oh, good boy. There you go. Now, here we come. Center section, 4 people across. The 2 center seats are empty. This is shortly after takeoff, and my passenger mate, she's already asleep. Now, this is the entertainment center. I was fascinated by the navigation. You can press a few buttons, and it brings up a map where you can see exactly where you are, your altitude, your airspeed, your ETA. You can zoom in and out, and you can follow your trip all the way across. And the entertainment system has first-run movies, TV shows, news. I didn't watch the news. I was completely into the trip. I didn't watch the news. And my seat was more comfortable than the seat I'm sitting in right now. if you didn't like Japanese food, I think maybe you could order American food ahead of time, but I ate what they gave me. It was great. We ate on metal silverware, not plastic silverware. I've got an Anna Air spoon in my coffee cup right now. Sorry for stealing airline silverware, but maybe I'll make up for it by plugging your airline. And I also brought my iPad mini, and I loaded it up with Victory at Sea episodes, so I was not bored the whole trip. I arrived in Tokyo completely relaxed. I rested a lot. It was just a great flight. Now here, this is taken at Tokyo. I'm not finished talking about the flight, but I ran out of footage on the flight. So when I go back, I am going to try and get on air again. It was so much different than my flight over on that stretch DC-8. We were packed in like sardines. I was 22 at the time, 130 pounds, in good shape. We arrived at Honolulu after a few hours, and I was all cramped up. There was no entertainment. The food was pretty good, but it really wasn't an enjoyable flight at all. So my next audio entry into my diary will be here in Tokyo, and there is one big mistake. I made a remark about how I'm in Tokyo at the height of the pandemic. Well, that was wrong. Maybe it was the height that day, but we had a long ways to go. As a matter of fact, they were still calling it just the coronavirus. This COVID-19 didn't even come into the vocabulary for several weeks after that. So coming up next is my entry in Tokyo. Stand by. Here I am in Tokyo. It was an 11-hour flight, and it was easy. I cannot believe what a great flight it was. The Japanese really know how to run an airline. I haven't been on such a pleasurable flight since flew to Hong Kong on R&R with Pan Am. Got my mask on. We're at the height of Corona, so just about everybody else has a mask on, so I figured I'd do the same. I got about a 2.5 hour layover, and then I head into Tanzania, and I'll be back. Well, I'm still in Tokyo, waiting for my flight, and while I was waiting, I bumped into another Vietnam vet, and he's going back to Vietnam. This is his second or third trip, and he was telling me one of the things that's hard to get in Vietnam is good beef. So he got permission from the airline. He checked to make sure it was all right. He put a bunch of frozen beef in his luggage and cooled it down with dry ice. I thought was interesting. And the other thing he was telling me is how the Vietnamese looked at Americans. They had put the war behind them. They really liked Americans. And in a previous trip, he'd fallen in love with a Vietnamese woman, and they were going to get married, and he's telling me about her family, how great her family is. And I found out a little bit about that after we landed, went outside the waiting area, and his new in-laws were waiting for him, and they all seemed real happy to see him. And I'm sitting here in Tokyo thinking, oh, my next flight, I'm committed. I'm going back to Vietnam, and I'm getting a little bit worried about going to a communist country, because let's face it, the government there is a direct descendant of a government who used to be my enemy. I have no more enemies, but there's still little feelings of that left in me. One of the reasons I went back was to put the war behind me. And the other thing is concerning me is I had been carrying on a long-distance romance over the internet for months with Tigger lady. And I'm worried that when she lays eyes on me for the first time, maybe I'm going to disappoint her. Maybe she isn't going to like me. And that's going to be the subject of my my next video, is my relationship. And a little hint is our relationship could make a script for a Hallmark movie. Now, my next video entry is going to be aboard the airplane. That's coming up real soon.
It's 27th February, about 6:30 in the evening. We're pushing away from the ramp in Tokyo, and this plane
Welcome on
is
board
just about
ANA,
empty. I'm going to have 3 seats all to myself.
833 for Ho Chi Minh City. This is a codeshare flight with Vietnam Airlines and our service partner. This flight is operated by Air Japan Aircraft and Crew. The captain in command of this flight is Francois Paquet, and the chief buster is Mao Yuchi. Please let us know if you need any assistance, and we hope that you enjoy the flight with us.
It is about 10:38 in the evening, February 27th. In Tokyo time, which my watch is set for, it's 11:38, which means it's in Tokyo. I am 72 years old today, and according to this map, I'm over Vietnamese airspace, and I can see lights of the city right now. I don't think it's showing up on my GoPro yet, but I think I'm back in Vietnam for the first time in 50 years. And just like the first time I was here, we landed about midnight, and I'm going to be landing about midnight again. This time I think it's going to be much more pleasant. I'm really looking forward to this trip. No green tracers this time. I'll try and get some more shots of the lights of the city, whatever city that is, a little bit later. Well, since I was on this flight and it was practically empty, I had my mask off. But since I'm going to be on the ground and keep everybody happy, I put my mask on.
Ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that your seatbelt is securely fastened. Thank you.
Lights are back on, and I've got this mic hooked up to my mask, as you can probably see. Cabin lights are on now, and I can't see anything outside.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now making our final approach. Please securely fasten your seatbelt. Please return your seated table to the original position. Please place your baggage under the seat in front of you. Please refrain from using the lavatory.
Okay, according to this, it's 10:57 in Ho Chi Minh City, Saigon. There it is, just like it was 50 years ago. As far as my memory is concerned, it looks about the same, coming in at night. I'm I'm on the left side of the airplane, and 50 years ago I was also on the left side. Oh, I just thought of this. The plane is early, and I'm not allowed to be in the country until February 28th, and it won't be February 28th for 1 hour yet. Whew. I hope I'm not going to be in trouble. The plane is early. I can tell the difference now. Look at the tall buildings. About to touch down. I think we're over the runway. That's it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have landed at Tanzania International Airport. The local time in Ho Chi Minh City is now 5 minutes past 11 p.m. Please remain seated with your seatbelt securely fastened until the captain turns off the seatbelt sign. Take care when opening the overhead compartments, as baggage may fall out. From now on, you can use electronic devices that emit radio waves. However, please refrain from touching on phone phones out of consideration for the passengers. This flight will be arriving at gate number 19 at International Terminal. Thank you for flying with ANA, Vietnam Airlines, and our Stallion partners. We look forward to seeing you again.
My arrival in Saigon on my second trip, we made a rather flat approach to the airport, so I got to see quite a bit of the city from the air. And it's really a contrast from the first time of my arrival in 1970. We made a rather steep, fast approach, and I didn't get to see much of the city. And once we landed, we just parked on the tarmac. And on military flights, the highest ranking people get off first. And since I was one of the lowest ranking people on there, I got to get off near the very last. So when the door opened and all the high ranking people got off, there was a chance for the heat and the smell to permeate to the back of the plane. And that was my first impression of Vietnam, was the oppressive heat and that terrible stink. And when I got off the plane, it was almost like being at a big military base back in the States, because it was practically all military people there telling you where to go, what to do, and it was night and you couldn't see that far. And I remember standing under kind of a lean-to, and there was a guy standing on a bench giving instructions. And I remembered him. He was in a class ahead of me at SEER school, and I guess this was his job, was telling people where to go and what to do. So we reclaimed our sea bags, got on a Navy bus, painted gray. It was like an old-fashioned school bus, except there were screens on the windows to keep people from throwing hand grenades inside. And we leave the air base there, and we went someplace in Saigon. It wasn't a long trip, and it was dark, and I really didn't see much of the country. And we arrived at the Annapolis Hotel. The picture you're looking at right now is a picture I took the next morning at the Annapolis Hotel out on the, I'll call the porch. I don't know why the Navy likes to call stuff hotel. There wasn't much of a hotel about it. It was just multi-story building with a big open bay barracks where they had cots. And this is where you did all your bureaucratic in-country processing. You were issued 2 sets of utilities, fatigues, greens. Being in the Navy, we didn't have those, but they gave our first 2 pair free. The rest of the year, we had to buy. And then you had to have Navy embroidered on your shirts and your name, and you took them next door to a tailor shop, and that you had to pay with. And they did all their bureaucratic stuff, and we did get a tour. They put us on another Navy bus and drove us around Saigon, and our tour guide was this young Vietnamese woman, just knock dead gorgeous. It was hard to look outside at all the sights of Saigon because she was so pretty. And the highlight of the trip, if you want to call it a trip, we were at a fish market, and she intentionally opened the door. And I thought the smell at Tan Son Nhut Airport was bad. This was 10 times worse. And the termite was so thick you could cut it with a knife. That's how bad it was. After spending one more night at the Annapolis, we got on a bus and got on a plane, and we were headed to our squadron base in Ben Thuy. Now in 2020, the plane arrived, taxied up to the terminal, got off on a jetway, all air conditioned. I didn't have a chance to take any pictures, so I just kind of followed the crowd, and there were plenty of signs in English. Picked up my suitcase, and now we've got to head to Customs and Immigration, and I'm a little bit worried because this is going to be my first time dealing with a communist government official, and I had visions in my head of a long table full of Vietnamese officers searching my baggage. That didn't happen. Walk up to a counter, and there's a young lady in uniform. I don't know if she was military or immigration or what, because every place in that country, any kind of, even security guards have shoulder boards and rank insignias on there. And I'm a little bit worried because I'm actually in the country illegally because the flight was early, and I was about almost an hour too early, and I just put my passport on the desk, and she opened it up, stamped it, and that was it. And I did actually say, "Come on," which is my poor rendition of Vietnamese saying thank you. walked to a kind of a security area, and somebody pointed at my carry-on luggage, threw it on the belt, and they x-rayed it. Went through the x-ray, and that was it. I was back. So I just followed the crowd again into the waiting area. I had to call Tigger Lady because I had arrived early, and our plan was initially I would get there and we'd go find a hotel for me to stay in. And now it's approaching midnight, and she gets a call for me, or actually a text from me, and she's got to arrange a hotel for me at the last minute, get in a cab, and meet me at the airport. So I stayed in the waiting area for a while, but I was kind of anxious to get out in the open air. So I walked through the doors and out into the waiting area outside where, all the cabs and everybody waiting for me is. And it was warm. I don't remember it being as warm as my first trip, but the main thing was the smell was gone. That awful smell was gone. A couple of years ago, I had a squadron reunion in Savannah, Georgia, and it reminded me of being in Savannah again. Instead of military barracks and whatever, there were regular buildings around. And so I did take one little clip while I was waiting for my ride. I'll play that now. I wish I'd had my camera rolling when Tigger Lady showed up, but I didn't. And as promised, my next video will be on Tigger Lady, how we met, maybe a few details on the month we spent together. So stay tuned. I'll start getting busy on my Tigger Lady story. Laugh and be happy.